My name is Barbara Allan. I am author of the book Conquering Arthritis, which has been the #1 best-selling arthritis book on Amazon.com for 7 years running. Today I'd like to talk about rheumatoid arthritis treatment with respect to probiotics. It turns out that probiotics, which are the healthy bacteria in your gut, are very important for regulating your immune system. So if you have any kind of inflammatory condition, whether it's rheumatoid arthritis or osteoarthritis or any of the other 100 types of arthritis, or actually any kind of inflammatory condition like other autoimmune diseases, having these healthy bacteria in your gut are an important part of moving away from the disease process back into health. So what I'm going to talk about today are non-dairy sources of probiotics, because many people with arthritis have problems taking dairy. If you can have dairy, all you need to do is go to the store and get yogurt or kefir or a probiotic supplement. You don't have a problem getting those, but other people, this is really useful information about how you can make your own and repopulate your gut with the right type of bacteria. So I am going to start first with sauerkraut. Actually, and I made a version with cabbage, and it's red because I put a single beet in, and there were 3 heads of cabbage, and I put in salt, and I put this in a crock, and I just let it sit in my kitchen. I put a plate on top to push out all the air, and I actually put a mason jar with water on top of that. And once a day or so, I would press down so that the gases would dissipate, and so everything would keep working correctly. And after 2 weeks, I had lovely sauerkraut. Again, it's red because I put a beet in it. And this is chock full of lots of different lactobacillus, which are a wonderful, wonderful probiotic. Many, many different species. It's actually better than any supplement you could buy, because most supplements, even the very best, only have 10 or 12 varieties. And this has hundreds of different wild bacteria. It just was from the air. And if you'd like the recipe, you can go to the website on the bottom of this page and get more information for the exact recipe. So this was the first probiotic I made that's non-dairy, and it's wonderful. Then I got so inspired that I made kimchi, and this is very similar, but it has onion and garlic and ginger in it, as well as cabbage. And I don't really like hot pepper, so I left that out, but you could also put that in. And this only took a week to ferment, because instead of catching only the wild bacteria, I poured a little bit of the brine from my sauerkraut into this, so it got to working really quickly. So the next probiotic is bean ferment. And this is very potent and very lovely. I cooked red beans, and first I soaked them overnight, because that will help with digestibility. And I poured off that water, and then I cooked them for about an hour, and then I put them in a blender with garlic and onions, raw garlic and raw onions. And then I just put a little bit of the brine from the sauerkraut in to get this started, and left it out for about 2 days. And here in Phoenix, we're a little warmer than other places, so that was enough. You might have to leave it out 3 or 4 days if you're someplace that's a little bit cooler. And this is just amazing. I've been mixing it with some tomatoes and having it just like I would regularly have refried beans, but oh, it is so good. And if you have a problem with red beans, you can cook whatever kind of beans you'd like. You could use lentils. You could use these red lentils. You could use something like split peas. You could use something like pinto beans. You could use something like northern white beans. Any kind of bean that you don't react against, that's healthy for you, that doesn't stir up your inflammation, you can use as a base. And then use that on tortilla chips or anywhere that you would normally have a bean dip. And if you don't like the onions and garlic, you don't have to put it in. But for me at least, they're wonderful. The next thing I made was something called potato cheese. And because I used some of the brine from the sauerkraut with the beets, it's a very pretty pink color, otherwise it would be white. And what I did was I baked a potato in the microwave, and then I used actually the brine from the kimchi, and I mixed enough brine in with the potato in a blender to make this kind of thick paste. And then I just let it sit out for about a day and a half. And it's very nicely fermented. It's very lovely. I don't know exactly how to describe it, but I'll try. It's got a little potato flavor, and then it's got some salt from the brine, and then it's got just a really lovely zippy flavor from the bacteria. It's I haven't ever had anything like it before, so I don't know exactly how to describe it, but what I notice is that when I have a little bit of this, I eat a whole lot less at meals. It's so satisfying. So there's something I'm getting that's really important when I eat this that I'm not getting when I'm having non-fermented foods only at a meal. The same thing is true if I have any of these products with the meal. I end up eating a whole lot less and being satisfied and full, and my body, it's almost like, now that I've had these a few times, I think about eating them, or I sniff it, I smell it, and just, it's almost like my whole body is smiling. So whenever I get that feeling, I know that something's really healthy for me. I also want to mention that you can use other sources of carbohydrates as well to grow your probiotics. So instead of baking a potato, you might want to cook some brown rice and then puree that in a blender with some of the ferment brine. Or you could use something like quinoa or barley or rye or whatever other grains that might work for you, millet. So there are many, many different source materials that you can use, and it just depends on what is safe for you in particular. And one of the ways to keep a food safe is to only eat it once every 4 days. So if you find 4 different sources of probiotics that you like, once you've made these, they can keep for weeks in the refrigerator. So then you can keep a variety, and then they'll stay safe over time as you take them every day. And the next recipes are something called orange ina, and I was inspired by this particular cookbook. It's called Nourishing Traditions by Sally Fallon. And she describes how you can juice 12 oranges, and I didn't have oranges. What I have is a tangerine tree in my yard, so I just juiced some tangerines. And this particular mixture, Sally Fallon recommends using whey, which is the liquid portion from cheese making or yogurt making. And so what I did was I used a kefir culture, and if you let it go long enough, the liquid and the solids will separate. So I used the liquid portion from kefir, and here is kefir making when it hasn't gone quite so far. So you need to let it go an extra day or so longer than you might normally do, so that the kefir will get acidic enough where the curds and the whey will separate. And just so you can see, I've got a picture here of what the curds look like that I separated out from the whey. And so you can use that just like cottage cheese. It's a very lovely form of cultured milk. So anyway, into this batch of tangerine juice, I poured some of the whey. And this has been fermenting about a day and a half. And when it's fermented enough, it'll start tasting a little bit like bananas, is what the cookbook says. And this definitely has some overtones of bananas. It's still got a little bit of the tangerine overtones, and it's just an extremely lovely way to get probiotics. So if you If you don't have a problem with dairy, you can use the whey. What I wanted to do was experiment as well with what if you had a dairy problem, how could you also make the orange drink? So I put again a little bit of the sauerkraut brine in with the tangerines. And this has a different taste because it's got a little bit different bacteria, and it's still very lovely. It doesn't taste like bananas yet, but it's getting some really nice, very fine, almost like wine overtones that are on top of the tangerine juice. It almost tastes like these are two different drinks because the microorganisms have added different flavors. And it's, again, a very lovely source. And I'm not sure if this goes another day or so, whether it will have the banana overtones or whether that only happens with the whey. And I'm doing a lot of experiments here, so feel free to leave messages for me if you try this, how it worked for you. One thing I also wanted to mention is I have gotten a lot of inspiration from this book called Wild Fermentation by Sandor Katz. And he's very experimental, and basically his idea about fermentation is try it with everything. And he gives some really good guidelines about how to start. And I want to mention that probiotics are not just for down-regulating inflammation. They're also for regulating your immune system so it fights against viruses better. And this is my latest edition of Science News. You can see the earthquake damage in Japan, so that'll give you some idea of when this came out, which is April of 2011. And there's a brand new study that just came out about antibiotics. When you take them, it weakens your ability to fight off pneumonia. And researchers don't know exactly why having good lactobacillus in your gut will help your immune system fight off viruses in your lungs. They just know it's true right now. And my guess is that as researchers look at this more and more, the healthier the gut is in our bacteria, the more our immune system works correctly, fighting off the things that shouldn't be there and not attacking our own bodies when we have an autoimmune disease. So, bon appetit, and I wish you a long and healthy life full of all sorts of good foods, and may the bacteria help you do this. Again, Barbara Allan, author of the book Conquering Arthritis.